Hello from Nala and me. Welcome to another Sunday's edition of Wardy's Waffle. Hope you're all okay. Had a great day today. This is Saturday. A really good day weather-wise. We're still not doing much on the land yet because it is still too wet underneath. We will get going on the sugar beet on the light land hopefully this next week. So this update, first of all, we are looking at SFI. That's a Sustainable Farming Incentive, the DEFRA scheme that is paying us to put non-food crops in the ground. I've got Jim Egan from King's Crops to talk through all about it and the ins and outs of it, because there's some implications for future years when you go into the scheme. So Jim's going to talk all about the scheme. We are also looking at floods again. I went into Boston and had a look at the barrier. The actual Boston barrier was working, so I managed to get there and have a look at that working, which was great. And then also into one of the pumping stations just outside Boston and look at how pumps work and the massive amount of water that they move. So that was really good to see that. And also after that went to Henry's, went to Short Ferry on the edge of Lincoln where the floods are, and Alan Lovell, the chair of the EA, managed to take up my request at NFU Council to come out and see Henry. So we've got a little bit of footage from that as well. And then also we've had the pub there, what's the pub called there? The Tirret Arms at Short Ferry. Had a coffee morning on Thursday it was, to raise money for the Links and Knots Air Ambulance, and also to mark 100 days of the floods. They were actually flooded a lot more than that, but it's been 100 days consecutively because they were flooded in October as well for 3 or 4 weeks. But it's 100 days consecutive underwater, which is having a massive impact on the farms in the area and also the pub. So we've got some footage from that as well. Anyway, that's it for the intro now. Let's crack on with, we've got Jim Egan here looking at SFI. You might recognise this friendly face, Jim Egan from King's Crops. We've got a lovely patch of wet soil behind us, Jim. We've just had a great 2 hours talking about SFI. Now, those of you who aren't farmers who watch this channel, SFI stands for Sustainable Farming Incentive. And just quickly, Jim, what is it?
It's a way of funding farmers for doing really good environmental work. It's not just about the edges of the field, which is why we spent 2 hours talking about the middle of the field. It's about supporting crop production in an environmentally friendly way. It's about things like wild bird seed mixes as well and wildflowers. So giving farmers a payment for work they do for the environment.
And it's also really, I suppose people say, it's about putting crops in the ground but paying us to grow things in the ground that won't produce food for humans, you could say as well.
Yes, it is. There's an element of that. So there's things like grass and herbs, which could be grazed by cattle, but it's not direct wheat grain production that we'd normally see. It supports production, some of it, but yes, some land will be taken out and lost.
So what we've been discussing this afternoon, and regular viewers again will know that I've been talking about dates, that if we don't get any spring crops in the ground by, and I've set the date of roughly April the 10th, we might not get them in because they won't perform very well in the terms of yield. Quite a lot of people are saying, well, let's go into SFI, let's put it into a legume mix or something like that because we can get some money for it. But you're actually saying be very careful because it might not work.
Yeah, I think that's right, Andrew. I think people really need to think long and hard about a decision based on what is an awful farming year. You know, it really is horrible. That wet patch behind us isn't the only wet patch we've seen on the farm today. And if you had taken a knee-jerk reaction and go into a scheme now, maybe put 100 odd hectares of your farm in, you may not be able to or want to continue with that action for the rest of the 3 years of the agreement. That's the first thing to consider. You're committing to a 3-year agreement based on 1 year of poor weather.
Yeah.
And whilst you can reduce the area you have in the scheme, so it's very, very nicely flexible, you could put 100 hectares in this year and then only do 50 next year, you're still committed to that scheme for 3 years. And it's really got to fit with what you want to do rotationally. And
I think we said as well that one biggest problem is that because this land is wet, we can't get on the land now to put a cereal crop in or a cash crop, say. If we can't do that, we can't get in on the land to put an SFI crop in. So the earliest we might be able to get on realistically to put an SFI crop in might be May time when the land's dry. But one of the biggest criteria is we cannot remove that crop until it is flowered.
That's right. So if you went in this year, you wouldn't actually get those flowering crops in the ground early enough.
Yeah.
Because you've got the wet soil.
Yeah.
So They expect you for an option called legume fallow, NUM3 for the farmers watching. They're expecting that to flower in the late spring through the summer months. So it's going to have to flower by the end of May. Well, looking at what's behind me and a lot of the clay, heavier soils that I've looked at recently, you're not going to be on the land until much before that.
So therefore, it won't be flowering till next spring and summer. So therefore, anything that goes in the ground this time in an SFI, it will be in the ground until next year. So realistically, the earliest chance you could get to plant a crop, a cereal crop of anything, would be summer or autumn of 25.
Yeah, that's the way I'd look at it if I was doing that. So we've discussed this and it did take us a couple of hours for both to get our heads around it. SFI is not the knee-jerk reaction to this.
No.
I think I said to you when we drove around and looked a couple of hours ago, what would you have done in 2012 when there was no SFI with this land?
Yeah.
And you said?
We'd get the land in good condition in the summer so that we could get an early winter wheat in mid-September.
Get your mould draining done if it needs doing. Maybe go to somebody and get a nice short-term pollen nip mix that'll power away in the summer months, so it could go in the ground in the second week in June if it doesn't all bake out dry, and you get yourself a perfect entry. And that's what we need to be doing now, is considering agronomically what's best for this land, and then plan your SFI over a 3-year term. And for someone like you, there is a really good opportunity for a legume fallow, and it helps you on the farm because your other break crops, spring beans, is not always a reliable financial crop. So that legume fallow to replace your spring beans over the 3-year term of agreement might actually work. It'll improve the soil, give you better food yields later on, and do something for the wildlife. So it's about thinking through.
So actually then we could say use the legume fallow in SFI as a break crop instead of beans or a crop like that, and then we'd have a guaranteed return for a crop, and it would actually give us a break as well.
Yep. And there's one other thing which sort of says something about how you farm and what you've done. I wouldn't recommend that everywhere I went. If you've got a high grass weed pressure, that is not the right option because you've got no herbicide use within the action. So you've got to have farmed well to get to a point where you can do that without a fear of black grass or resistant rye taking over and actually making the problem worse. So it really is a case of farm by farm, thinking through what you want to do, thinking through what works for you and fits with your rotation, and rather than an income replacing things like BPS which have been phased out, it's a way of helping you manage risk on the farm while you deliver something really good for the environment at the same time.
Great, thanks Jim. We will go into this and again in a bit more detail because there's lots of other options in SFI, aren't there? There's lots of management plans you can go into. We've got hedgerow reports and conditions, all sorts of things. So we'll touch on that when we have finally decided what we're going to do.
Yep, that's great.
Great, thanks Jim.
Thank you.
So that's Jim's take on it and mine as well. But since I recorded that, which was done about a week ago, DEFRA have announced that there is a maximum of 25% of your farm you can put into SFI or into non-food crops. Whereas originally it was 100%. So you can only put 25% now. So that's a new thing that's just come in. But we are still looking at SFI here on the farm here and going into various options, which I'll touch on that another time because Jim's coming over in the next week to get us into that and sign up to some of the options. So anyway, that's it for SFI. Now heading across to Boston and looking at the Boston barrier and how the barrier actually works and helps protect Boston at some really, really high tides. We're at the Boston barrier now. This is looking at it close up. That apparently now the barrier is virtually at the top of that concrete. You just see the walkway, another few inches and it's about as high as it will go, but it can go over rotate and come up for maintenance. is the Witham coming out through there. This is the Haven just here, and that's the South 40-foot pumping station. So after seeing the Boston Barrier working, I then went across to Hobhole pumping station and learned how much water it moves, and looking at the whole ins and outs of a IDB pumping station, which was really interesting because I've never seen anything like that close up before. So here we are now with Hobhole pumping station. This is the Haven. This is where the water from the Hobhole pumping station, which we're at here now. Look at this from the other direction. This is where the water goes from the Haven and out to sea. So this here is the Hobhole drain. I think we're going to go inside in the pumping station, and it's controlled by the Witham 4th District Internal Drainage Board. So we've just had a bit of a talk about this pumping station, and I've got a few notes here. And these engines are 770 horsepower each. Huge engines. There's 3 of them, you can see here. And they're driven through David Brown gearboxes, which is incredible. And each pump moves 9,000 litres of water per second, and that uses 100 litres of diesel per hour per pump. So staggering amount. There you can see the water in the drain out there. Just a few statistics about Hobhole pumping station. It looks after 37,000 hectares come through here, and that's mostly grade 1 and 2, so that will soil, so that will be really good vegetable land, growing a lot of crops. It supports in the area 100,000 people, 30,000 jobs, and 2,000 businesses are looked after in this area by this pumping station. So to get the size of the gearbox, this is the gearbox. You can see it's about up to my shoulder, so this is the height of them, just huge gearboxes. So to carry on the statistics here, there's 29% of this area is in agriculture, and in 2022 there were lots of tests done on this pumping station to see about how suitable it is and what its life is, and apparently they've said it's reached its end of its life. So a new one has been put in the pipeline now, it's in the planning stages, and the new one will have 20% extra capacity, which is great to hear. But it will cost £63 million to build this new pumping station, but with a 30% contingency, they need to have £86 million in the budget, which is phenomenal, really, when you look at that. 2023 was the wettest that Hobhole have had on record, and that is going back, I don't know, it's 150 years, a huge time. And the pumping station, this one was built in 1957 at a cost of £387,000 against that new one of all those millions. Incredible. So, a few stats about here, but just looking at this pumping station, it's phenomenal, the amount of water that it actually gets rid of. And all the water actually goes through underneath us. All the water flows through from one side there, underneath here, out into the Haven and out to sea. And this is just a screenshot of where I am at the minute in relation to sea. You're looking at it, it shows we're not very far from the Wash or from the East Coast, from the North Sea. So just looking back in the building, there's a big gantry. You can see a track there and a track up this side, and there's a crane on it there, and that's got a 10-ton load, you can see there. So that crane is obviously needed in case these engines and pumps need anything lifting in and out. So it goes right up there over the doorway and right to the other end of the building across there. So this is where the water comes through underneath here, and then through there is where the pumps are. And that machine there, and that grill, is used to clean the weed off that grill. So it runs on tracks. You can just see it runs on that little channel there that guides it so it doesn't move anywhere. The wheels, it runs on the wheels, but that moves over. You can just see the spikes on the bucket, and that will scrape up here and it will clean all the weed. There's none there at the minute, but it will clean the weed off that grill and stop the weed going into the pumps, which are all underneath there. You can just see through there and all underneath here. So from Hobhole, then went across to Short Ferry to see Henry and see the floods there, and just see what the latest situation is on repairs on the riverbank as well. So here we are now heading across to Short Ferry. So I've just come to Short Ferry now. We've got another meeting with the Environment Agency, and also Henry's here, and Rob, the landlord of the Tirret Arms. You can see behind me the water is still here. They are mending the bank at the minute across in the distance, but I'll just turn the camera around. But we're just having to catch up about the options here, what's happening, because it's still here, water's still here, but I need to have a long-term plan here. You can see they're repairing the bank across there in the distance. We'll all go there and have a look. Another day, but I haven't got time here today because I've got a lift here.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I think that these new SFI options that we
Henry's talking about SFI.
is where we'll be going. That's the only way we can get it.
He is going to put this land into SFI. I think he has already, because at the minute that's all he can do at the minute to get some income off this land. So there we have the latest from Short Ferry, and thank you to Alan Lovell for coming across to see him and some of the other Environment Agency staff and getting the latest. But one thing what we must stress here is that we're talking about Henry's area becoming a flood alleviation scheme and paying Henry for it. That won't just happen overnight. That'll take a lot of setting up. But what is really, really important here is that the water storage areas are secondary. Maintaining rivers and getting water moving out to sea is the first thing that needs to happen. It's Thursday morning, and I've just come to Short Ferry pub again, and they've got a coffee morning on here because this is the 100th day of the floods here behind me. So 100 days this water's been here, and Rob at the pub has not had any trade from the other side of the water for 100 days. You can see they are busy. The lot of red coats around here at the minute. What's happening is a lorry came down here and pulled the electric telephone cables off in the top here, you can see. So that's caused Rob grief there as well. So huge amount going on here as always, but 100 days really is just too much for anybody. So we're going to go in here.
Speak of the devil.
Ian,
Morning.
how you doing? All
Yeah,
right?
I've got that report from Tim, haven't you?
And Henry's just rolled up.
No, no.
This is proceeds here going to the Windsor Knots Air Ambulance, which is great. Just need to say a word to Henry in a minute, David. We've got quite a lot of people in here as well, which is good. There's a raffle going to take place as well. I'll grab a coffee in a minute and some biscuits. This is the trouble. We've got lorries coming down here that shouldn't be here because the signage isn't good enough. We've got BBC Look North here as well. So 100 days the water's been here. It was actually here since last October. It just disappeared a little bit in December, but it came back again early January with a vengeance. It's been here since then. That's the pontoon in the distance. You can just see over there that's floating back. That's what's been carrying the repairs and some of the equipment over. Let's get over the fence around here, and I'll just highlight one or two things from this area. But the problem we've got is that anybody who wants to come to this pub has got to come down the road there, as you just saw with that lorry. That is the road going through the other side. But if I can just stand on here and not fall off, get a bit higher up, you can see the water now. That brick building there is a pumping station, and the water's flowing across over the road. So up there in the distance you can see an excavator there on the road, you can see another excavator there, and then there's some equipment there, and that's where they're bringing the stuff in from the other direction. But believe it or not, it would normally take from the pub here, from the pub there, down this road to get to the other side there, would take about 5 minutes, and it's probably, I think, is it about a mile and a half, 2 miles, the detour to go right round the road that way, round Lincoln, right out on the road, right round. It's about 14-mile detour, and it takes 35 minutes just to go that short distance. And that's why the pub here is struggling. While we've got this coffee morning, while Rob's having this and holding it, getting a lot of people here, which is great. Just get a bit publicity, but this is the problem we've got with all the water here. There is a pump. I don't know where that water's coming. There's a pump somewhere on the other side there bringing the water out, but of course the size of that pipe, it won't make much headway. And that's the valve there from the pumping station there, but you can see the valve is shut at the minute because that pump's not working because it got flooded. You See where the water is now in relation to the road. There's not much road that's covered in water now. Only a bit there from there either side of that traffic lights. See the white lines. So I think they've about finished actually repairing that bank. The pontoon's floated across behind. Can't see it now, it's behind the yard. This is some of the equipment they've been using to repair it. Obviously with that being a narrow base of the tracks across there, that's been able to go across the top of the riverbank there where those red and white posts are to where the digger is, just up there, because that's where the hole in the bank's been. Just pointed out, Rob has. Look at that. You maybe can't see anything there. Spot anything? There's a duck there sitting on 14 eggs. Look at that, you wouldn't believe where it's nesting. That's it. I've had a couple of hours here with Rob and some locals, which is fantastic, and altogether they've raised around about £400 for the Lincolnshire and Nottinghamshire ambulance, which is fantastic. I'm a big supporter of that. I'm going to go try and do a waffle from in there. The base is only just on the edge of Lincoln at back of RAF Waddington, but fantastic because you just never know when we're all going to need it. Anyway, let's crack on and get back to Leadenham, back to the farm. If anyone's not sure how wet this land is, with a lot of clay in it, difficult soil, just look at this. This is a Polaris Gator wheel around the outside of the field. We've been mapping the fields with the new John Deere with Green Star system. Machine weighs probably 0.8 of a tonne. Water in that wheel. You imagine going to put a tractor on here that weighs 8 and 10 tonnes, what it would do. Out of interest, this field will be planted with sugar beet, but looking at what we've just seen, it won't be for a few weeks. So that's it for another Sunday's edition of Wardy's Waffle. But just before I go, I just wanted to remind you or alert you to put a date in your diary. If you're farming in Lincolnshire, this is April the 10th at Lincolnshire Showground, 9 o'clock in the morning. The NFU have organised a meeting to carry on the farm assurance reviews. There was a governance review on Red Tractor a few weeks ago, and we're now the second part of that review is to look at whole farm assurance, and you are all welcome to come to this. We must have an input from you, please, to do this. And if you can't get to the meeting, please get in contact with me and I'll take your views forward. I'll have a chat with you on the phone and take your views forward to the meeting. But it's really important we get as many people as possible. Every region in the country is having these meetings. I will put a post in the description of this video where the date of all those regional meetings are. But please, if you're in Lincolnshire, April the 10th, 9 AM at the showground, please get along and air your views and give us your opinion on farm assurance. So that's it from me and Nala. Thanks very much for watching this update. Hope you've enjoyed that, and we'll see you again Wednesday evening next week. Sorry, I've just forgotten one thing. I am getting a few calls from farmers in other parts of Lincolnshire who are saying that they've still got riverbanks burst and not been repaired, and various things happening on their farm with water. So I am going over to other areas to have a look at these and just highlight these. So next Sunday will be one of these other farms that I'm going to visit this next week and just highlight what's going on in other parts of Lincolnshire and water management. Anyway, that is it finally from me. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you midweek.